Again, we're going to add some commentary to it on this go around. We will be reviewing and adding commentary on HR Bill 3106. Man, stay tuned. I'm going to turn off my cam, give it about a couple of minutes, and then I'll get started with the presentation and providing this information. Appreciate you. Give me a sec. Well, all right. Hope the mic is coming out good and hot. What we will be reviewing right here is this HR Bill 3106. Now, you're going to have to excuse Indica in the back as I provide this commentary. Should be all right. All right, so a bill to require a joint domestic terrorism report established within the Department of Homeland Security, a national center for the study of domestic terrorism, authorized research within the Department of Homeland Security on current trends in domestic terrorism and for other purposes. Now, there are a couple of key elements that I have to bring out here that stand as most relevant to me. I'm putting them inside of a shorter version that will be like my little video snippet later. Hey, Rashawn Waiters, thanks for joining. Important information, right? Because about last week, maybe a little bit at the end of last week, probably Saturday, as I was reviewing content that was being distributed on YouTube, one of the videos that I found to be of import was the Candace Owen congressional hearing testimony. And when she was there, she said, where are the numbers that prove white supremacy or white nationalism is a major threat? She went on to say that it was just something being used to perpetuate the Democratic Party and arouse their base, as well as to say there are other agendas that we should be focusing on if our intention is to be of a benefit or a great service to the Black community or to America in whole. So I can't disagree with the scarecrow argument that she attempted to create. I can disagree with the whole this is a Democratic agenda pushing to, just to rouse the Black vote. And I also do agree with her initial premise. Where are the numbers? And so as I went and started looking at some of the bills that were out, this one is one of the more recent bills that's out there. Wanted to provide a little bit of context and in summary, why is this important? So started back in June 5th, 2019 is when all of the names of the people that you see there, of course, it originates from Mr. Thompson of Mississippi, Miss Jackson Lee, and then others who chimed in, signed, and co-sponsored this bill to get it to the subcommittee and such. I went through some of the definitions earlier. One of the major definitions, I'll give the streamlined and condensed version here. Creating a report is not always easy, right? Because it's an information share agreement amongst different bureau departments, an information share amongst different departments. And because it's the federal government, and then you know that there are state government, the state does still have control over their policing matters, but they do not have the right to just take the information that's there. They have to ask for it, and even at times they have to request it through the courts. And so they want to establish a way of being able to consolidate all of the hate crime information that had been reported. So at the bare minimum, it has to at least be reported, right? One of the major premises here is that the FBI director will be over it, Department of Homeland Security. We know that they recently, I know it was executive order and other ways, the Department of Homeland Security has consolidated a lot of power when it comes to investigating domestic and international terrorism. And so not just the Department of Justice, but they would also be in on it. The judiciary has to share that information, the Intelligence Committee and such. Now, there's a lot that goes into some of these definitions, such as hate crime, and categorically, I think they're pigeonholing the conversation and even diminishing the value of the data set that they could potentially create. When they say international terrorism, I'm thinking that they're going on a broader lens because it would overshadow the domestic, if that makes sense. So you do have an agenda that says anti-Muslim and so forth, anti-Semitic language and things in so many other spaces. So for them to be able to monitor that, say, are we going to do a thorough investigation or you know, the Benghazi type investigation or so forth, and then move forward with what happened to that investigation, who were the people who were involved, what were the actual actions taken. All right, so let's move forward. This was one of the big ones, so I got to grab my screen share to add to my video a little bit later. Give me 1 second here. Give me a new. Let's take this. And these are some of the areas that I believe are for further scrutiny. Online platform. The online platform means any public-facing website, web application, or digital application, including a mobile application, and includes a social network, an ad network, similar to the attacks on Facebook, as they were saying it from Russia, and then a search engine or an email service. So whether you're sending out the email subscription notifications and they believe that you're attached to creating a nexus of people who have been radicalized for a cause that is political, and when I say political, I'm still referring to the protection of our identity, the Black identity extremists, as they would want to call them. And so this type of information, they go inside of Congress and they have their Senate hearings, and it's about white nationalism, or then they'll broaden it out and just say violence. And then when they finally form the bill, you will have no language inside that actually identifies white nationalism. And in fact, as you'll see with this presentation, you'll have more protections for domestic terrorists than you will actually have actionable intelligence gathering or permissions to actually pursue domestic terrorism when it has a white face on it. As long as it can be connected to a black face, you will have all privilege to go forward. And I'll show you why that is, or how that is. But because of some of the protections that they put in place, the white supremacy or the white nationalism question will not be one that can be answered through this. So let me do this. File save as. I want to say what the real target is. For me, we know that we are in a digital space. And so I'm going to call it HR 3106. Actual target is online. And then I would also go as far as to say BIE. I don't trust them now, and unless they can prove otherwise, I don't think that I have a reason to trust them. But that was one of the major ones. Now, check this one out. This is where you'll find the contradictions that make this bill toothless, or even this action, this activity, even irrelevant. Personally identifiable information. This is going to be a key right here. So let me grab this one as well, because inside of in the shorter video that we create for those folks who don't have the attention span for some of our longer presentations, they may find some benefit to the shorter one, which will just have the slides without my commentary, but at least they'll have that information saved and on record on this day, September the 28th of the year 2019. This is HR 3106, conflicting agenda. So the conflicting agenda, if you're going to create a report or a database, a data repository, and then it's about those who are intentionally or intending on or conspiring towards domestic violence, or violence in the form of domestic terrorism, politically based violence here in America, but you're not going to allow that data repository to have personally identifiable information, with a certain caveat that I'll bring out later. Don't want to give away the punchline. But if you're not going to allow that, then it's toothless. But the way that they get around it and make it more geared towards, you know, Black identity extremists, other folks from other nations and things, that information is vital. So I'm going to take that one, and then we'll continue to move forward. All of these things, your mother's maiden name, your social security number, should you have one. The reason why would they put social security number? Why? I'll give you this one, because if you're dealing with international terrorism, they don't have these. So you can write that inside of your bill, and it now becomes a protection for domestic, for the white face, but because a social security number is not something that foreigners would have, you do still have the go ahead to act against those foreigners. So in one sense, yeah, you want to protect America from threats abroad, but what about those domestic threats? What are you doing, or what are you putting in place? Such as a name of the individual, all of that stuff is cool. Your date of birth, I don't know how they confirm, but maybe they have some records where they can do that. And even a biometric record, any other information such as medical records. So if you're like me, you know that there's other bills that are being considered. I won't go into them today. Maybe I'll do another live that goes into it. But even at the border crossing, they increased, or one of their initiatives, the Homeland Security bill, was to increase the powers of the Border Patrol by giving them the ability to verify, to appoint people who can do medical background checks on the people coming in. What up, Drum? What up, Shazay? B1? So that medical history is going to be something that can also be deployed against those coming in. But we know with the medical protection rights or whatever it is here in America, it still is a protection for those who are here. And then employment information, harder in the sense of being able to get the employers to actually disclose, because some will, some won't, unless they do have those judicial papers. But like that affidavit or whatever it's called, a survey for it. I don't know what the hell those things are called. A warrant. Financial information, well, we already know the banks are lock in step with them. So wanted to provide this information. Why? Number one, as just my eye opener for you all. We know where they're attacking, but sometimes we can let these type of bills and the actual legislation, the tangible things that are being pushed forward in Congress, we can let those go unreported. Nobody's saying anything. Like, you heard about HR 40, but nobody's probably speaking about HR 3106. So when I say nobody is, instead of me just saying, hey, why isn't anyone talking about it? If there's only 5 or 6 of us in here that get the information and it's something that we're like, damn, that is important, I want to be able to provide some of those key takeaways for those conversations. You can do the research on your own. It's a quick Google search. You can read it for yourself and see what information is there. But at least we have some people who are working towards getting that information out, so we are not uninformed. What can we do about it is another fight. We are a long ways from having the political leaders who are in a position to actually fight back. So all of that. All right, man. So now that I got these certain points that I want to bring out, I think we'll dive into it. Wait, I think I needed one more, which is wanted to say exactly what it is. Proof is required for the investigation, sharing of the information, federal requirements for the public release, their methodology, threat prioritization. So all of the things that they want to get from them, from this report. Oh yeah, I wanted that one right there too. This is just the one that says that it's going all the way back to 1995. Why is that important for us? Because we know that's where it really started ramping up that crime bill. And if you started taking real numbers on what crimes were actually being prosecuted for, this gives them the go ahead. So again, this one right here, we know about the crime bill. We've already reported on that. No need to beat a dead horse. But its ramifications are serious because of just how many African Americans ended up getting a police record due to the crime bill, whether it was drugs or whatever else. And we know the history is, or the legacy is, even for slavery or the amendment constitutional rights, they stop at unless convicted of a crime. And so by having a mass incarceration campaign that goes from the 90s, I mean, I know people who are a little bit more astute in history, they'll take you back further than the 90s. But in my lifetime, I like to stick right here at the 90s crime bill and look at how many were arrested pursuant to the laws and the increased law enforcement activities, the hyper militarization of the police force, the Rodney King aftermath, that era of criminalization and everything that happened since. For me, it's important because marijuana was the big in my lifetime. It wasn't the crack as much anymore, but it was marijuana. And so all of those arrests now put a docket or put a justification for those people to be targeted and not protected by a bill like this. If you have for instance, in short, if you have a felony, you would not be protected from this. You would be somebody that they can keep a report on and track, and they could say, oh, well, we found this person who does have a felony, and therefore we can share their information. They are someone who we can monitor and watch. I call it like this: a new creation of a federal watch list, but one that's more actionable. And that's going a long way towards just really what is the meat, what is the purpose of this entire presentation. But this one is data request through 1995. Oh wait, data request for, I guess, crimes 1995 through 2026. So, all right, now that I got that, I'm moving to the second part of it, which is the actual presentation that is being created. Bring that joint on over here. And so when I'm trying to create content, I'm trying to use a different platform than just the PowerPoint, although I prefer PowerPoint in professional environments because it allows for that data share to be transitioned amongst others. And then Google Docs or Google has a means towards collaborative work on PowerPoints. This one has a more seamless transitional or experience when it comes to just presenting the information. I'm still working on learning how to best do it, but I do know this: once I grab my screen shares, I can add them directly into the project. There's also a way towards being able to grab information from the web. So if I wanted to add complementary information, such as, you know, white supremacists or white nationalists are excluded, and then go on the web and find acts of white violence, from any of their factions, and then just create a lot of different slides that go inside of it that we can speak to. Since 1995, where the incidents of white violence in America, white crimes that could have been domestic terrorism, that at the time were ruled out. I mean, they could be white national groups, but they would be protected because they're saying we're exercising our First Amendment right. And so any of that stuff. So let me grab these. These are the language. Oops. Fuck it, I don't have time to keep going back and doing that. So I'll just grab them all again, add them into the joint, and then we'll drop them into the slideshow. And from there, that's how I'll start to present information for the shorter videos, for those who do like, just give me my content about 5 to 15 minutes so I can consume it while I'm on lunch break. If you can do it in less than 5 minutes, it would be more preferable, because that would allow me to get back to lunch or to, you know, check out a couple of other videos from the B1 network or from other content creators that I like. So if you can give me my information in less than 5 minutes, I would appreciate it. I want to get to that point of being able to deliver content like that. It does take some work, but we got to be able to get there. No excuses. All right. And so once we've dropped them in, as you see on the bottom section, now it's about organizing them in the order of the presentation. And so what was most important is identifying, let me see. So the story originates with Candace Owens, and it is talking about violence. Unfortunately, oh, and then HR, I probably should have grabbed the one with just the title of the thing, so we could have saw that. The sections that I would like to cover. How is it paid for? So the bill authorizes $1 million or $2 million for each fiscal years. So that's number one, is how is it paid for? Oh wait, no. What it is, Discord. Information. I was in the definitions. All right. So even though it seems, when she goes on there, she says white violence and all of that, white nationalists, it exists. Can we get anything that looks at it? So that's the first image. Would they be targeting them? No. Who do they actually target? Online platforms, you know, social networks and such. Oh, let's do it this way. Add the benefits. So we need to study so that we can find any potential harms to the local communities, civil rights, civil liberties, and then public safety. That's why they're doing it. how they're going to pay for it. $2 million appropriated for the years. Let me get that 1995. What do they actually want? Is information going back to 1995 and then forward. Let me see. Oh, there it is. I'll pay for it. What are they looking for? Any information on domestic terrorist activities that have occurred since 1995, going all the way through to their end date 2026 and beyond, every 5 years publishing that report. Let me see. Oops, that's the punchline. Don't want to give that away yet. What is this one? The online platform. So that was who is actually flying. So that's right before the punchline. There it is. The rules. No report or database created pursuant to this act may contain the personally identifiable information of any person except persons indicted or convicted of a crime with a domestic terrorism or international terrorism nexus. So don't let it fool you when it says, don't think that these two are concurrent, like it's necessary for domestic terrorism as the crime or indictment. That's not what they're saying. They're still saying unless it's somebody who has been indicted or convicted of a crime, which is why 1995 is important. All of the people who were convicted of that stupid bullshit misdemeanor drug offense are now people who are not protected. The rules of construction. No report or database created pursuant to this act may contain the personal identifiable information of any person except. Stop right there. So the personal identifiable information that they can accept, let's do it in reverse, is anybody who has been convicted of a crime. So if you've been convicted of a crime, then they can use your information or your personal identifiable information. You know, how sometimes the police and the newspapers will publish people who had been convicted of a crime, and they can publish that and make it public knowledge, just like websites can publish information when people get arrested or whatever it is. All of that information currently exists, but to add it to a network, a smart network, an advanced critically thinking AI-based network that is analyzing information in real time and looking for any triggers or responses for domestic terrorism inside of, once again, your online platforms. So in real time, live stream time or more, Google Analytics sharing information from Google, from Outlook, from Facebook, from YouTube, from Instagram, from whatever social networking, using facial recognition software or whatever means it is, using key identifiers of the public information that they have. If you had been convicted of a crime, then your information can be shared and linked through this integrated system as they are searching for ongoing threats to society. Where does that go? No report. Let me see. No report or database created pursuant to this act may contain the name or other identifying information of any organization organized in lawful political. So that's the second part of that. So what does that mean? It means that white nationalist groups, neo-Nazis, and other members of the alt-right and the Unite to Right, when they come together and say we have a peaceful protest scheduled where we will be exercising our First Amendment rights, for example, okay, so that's this one. Well, we will be exercising our First Amendment rights. Their organization is not their information. Where will they be? The information that says, look, there'll be Klan rallies that are happening. They're meeting in their planning stages at such and such website, and then at such and such church, and at such and such a restaurant, and they're planning on X, Y, and Z. Do we have the authority to survey this meeting and provide the information for those meetings to the general public as a form of alert or awareness of potential domestic terroristic or domestic terrorism activity or planning stages here in America or in Charlottesville? So when they were meeting and organizing and getting ready to go down to the event in Charleston or Charlottesville, Virginia, when they were meeting and in the planning stages and online, and the Federal Bureau of Investigations may have said, you know what, I think there's a higher number of incidents that are referring to domestic terrorism and the threat of domestic terrorism and the planning stages from some of the white folks. What ends up happening is the person who releases that information and says, I think there's something that's happening. What happens is they can't go after them because the personally identified information would only be available. They could only share that and make that a part of their network and actionable if it was people who had been convicted of a crime. I want to discombobulate this for you. When the doctors and the lawyers and the sheriffs are coming together and planning these white power meetings, they are protected by the law under the First Amendment right. And then even the Federal Bureau of Investigation doesn't have the ability to put out a public service announcement that the armed and dangerous are in your neighborhoods, that they will be coming to your neighborhood. I mean, that right now you may be in a space where you can receive a notification. But according to HR 3106, Domestic Terrorism Data Act, or Domestic and International Terrorism, excuse me, Data Act, the rules or the language that is going in, no report or database created pursuant to this act may contain the personally identifiable information of any person, except those convicted of a crime. So I think I need to move this one before that. This is the definition that they used of personally identifiable information. Means any information about an individual elicited, collected, stored, or maintained by an agency, including. Why is that problematic? Because as we go to the next one, no reported database may exist that contains the personally identifiable information. So let's do it. For instance, we're going to call this guy Manuel. He is a Hispanic white man who identifies mostly by the white, who is a part of the alt-right. And he has a website. He has a email subscribers list that he communicates with regularly. And he's in the planning stages of a rally in a city near you. And it's armed men. He's saying, carry your weapons. You know, we will exercise our Second Amendment rights. Get your flags ready. We know we're going to be agitating a lot of people there in the local community that, and by agitating them, we'll be driving a greater awareness to the cause of white nationalist sentiments there in wherever they're at a city near you. And rather than this agency and this real-time database being able to publish the information about Manuel, saying, look, Manuel is in your neighborhood. If you see Manuel, be on high alert. And then when you're driving up your freeways and it shows information, be on high suspicion for increased activity for domestic terrorism, it is prevented and curtailed by the language of this bill. Hopefully that makes it a little bit more clear. And so we know by executive order, the president said that the police are a protected class. But here it was when the police in that city in Charlottesville received the information that Manuel was coming to Charlottesville with his neo-Nazis, and they were armed and they were going to be agitating and they were going to be counter-protesting any of those people who wanted to remove the monuments of people like Confederate General Robert E. Lee. And the people of Virginia said, we don't want the neo-Nazis here coming. We do want our right to protest the monument of Robert E. Lee. Manuel said, no, we're going to counter protest. And Manuel shows up with armed white boys. And the police, guess who they sided with? You see the barricade and the don't cross the yellow tape? The police, the state police in the good state of Virginia, protected the statue and therefore protected Manuel and the neo-Nazis. And then going forward, now they have the bill that continues to add additional protections that says even the groups that Manuel associates with are protected. And as long as we live in a society where they are not the ones who are convicted of the crime, when they can go and say, so remember, don't get confused. Black folks, white folks, Mexicans, people were going to protest the Confederate monument. They were just having a peace. Look, we don't think we should have this Robert E. Lee tribute here. We want to protest it, and we want to raise some awareness with our protest. So hopefully we can have City Hall or whoever it is, the government who houses these in their public parks, remove it. Neo-Nazis, white nationalists said, we're going to counter-protest. Tiki Torches, all of those folks who came and then said, you know what, we're going to come together. They were armed. They were the ones who initiated violence and drove down the hill at full speed, ramming and smashing into people, and ended up killing someone. But they weren't the ones convicted of a crime. And in fact, when you look at the police or the arrest records, it was the other side. The people who are actually there with the first legitimate protest of the Robert E. Lee Monument had more people actually arrested. And the police protected this group, the Manuels. The importance of the legislation of HR 3106 is the appropriations of over $2 million. Sure, that's a scratch in the hat. It says that it wants to target international and domestic terrorism. Sure, but in the language of the bill, the international more or less, not as much the domestic, but even on the domestic, there's some descriptions that they're looking at. Personally identifiable information that is elicited, collected, stored, or maintained by their agencies. The rules of its construction is that no report, which is this report, or database, which is the repository of all the information. How many Manuels are there in America? How many meetings are they have? What are their websites? What are their web bases? What are their YouTube channels? How many subscribers do they have? How many people are listening and watching? Evident in online platform, the actual target. No reported database. The name or identifiable information of any organization engaged in lawful. So that's why they call themselves Unite the Right. Or public discourse, which is why they give themselves the bullhorn and the ability to walk around and try to have that conversation. Those are the big takeaways that I pull out of HR 3106. Let me know what you think in the comments. I will create just a condensed version, throw a little bit of music in the background. I'll add some more of these type of images to it so folks can be aware of what's actually going on. It is the 3-card Molly, or the shifting of the cards that Candace Owens says, I gotta play it one more time. Hopefully I can play it. They'll probably flag it. Yeah, let me not play it because they will flag it. I know that they will. But when she goes on and says, I'll speak as a black woman, white nationalism does exist. People who believe that they are white supremacists does exist. Their violence and their crimes happen. Show me the numbers. Rather than them moving forward with showing the numbers, they took the old bill, revised it, and eliminated the ability of the Federal Bureau of Investigation to work with the Department of Homeland Security and then the local agencies in the state to be able to publish or maintain records of white supremacist nationalist information. And that's something that will happen throughout 2026. If you think I'm wrong, prove me different. Maybe it's my interpretation, but when I read the language, those are my big call outs. Number one, online data repository, going after the online spaces, social media, email subscriptions, and such. Then saying, unless they were convicted of a crime, we can't keep their name or publish their information in the repository. We just won't do it. It won't be a part of our report. They won't give you the names of the Manuels and those who are organizing and planning these counter protests when the actual people who are exercising their amendments, their constitutional rights, were the original people. I'll give you an example that resonates with Moses. Sacramento, California. Stephon Clark was murdered by the police in his grandmother's backyard. African-American community members said, this is bullshit. Let's get organized. They come together and start organizing and such, from churches to restaurants or whatever. They said, here are some of the things that we want to do. We want to march. We want to go to City Hall. We want a fundraising initiative. We want water. We want our corporate sponsors to come in and provide some form of assistance if we have any inside of the Black community who are willing to contribute. And then we want the Black church to play an active role in getting our message out. Where we'll be, when we'll be, at what time we'll be, what is our intention, what is our destination. So that's what they said when they wanted to organize. They got organized. Some sections of that protest were organized. Other sections were people who were mad and angry and decided to do their own thing, rogue of an organized protest. But the right to protest was within their rights. But if you were active or looking or monitoring in those chats when that protest was going down in places like Sacramento and in Los Angeles and other spaces, the media was covering it. And the media covered it from a lens of, these Black folks are in the streets. They've cut off the highways. They're marching in the streets and in public. They're disrupting commerce. And if you look in the chats there, you'd see that there were people saying they should run them over with their cars if they're shutting off the freeway. If you're late for work, just run them over with your cars. Predominantly white folks, as you may know, and Hispanics saying just hit them with the car, just run them over. The Black people who had the right to protest a grievance and bring awareness and drive information about this unlawful, or what they consider to be an unlawful, murder of one of their community members. Right? But did you know that after that, the Klan also came in and said, well, we will be a force. When they want to protest here in Sacramento, we will also have a presence, a counter protest or a counter protest, to where your young Black boys and girls who are standing out there trying to protest, you know, the candlelight vigils, the person who gets up with a bullhorn and says, no justice, no peace, all of that. The neo-Nazis and the Klan members who were around Sacramento then also plan and organize to counter-protest that protest. And they say, we'll bring our arms. And so the poor Black boys and black bodies who are out there, you know, it's young folks out there, you know, no justice, no peace, with the black fist in the air. And they're having that conversation in general with the general public. They're trying to get Channel 5. They're trying to get Channel 12 to come and report on it because they want the information out there. They want people to be aware. Look, police just killed another one. What is the public sentiment? They want public sentiment to say, look, it's not okay to shoot down Black bodies. And then the counter protest comes armed and dangerous. And rather being able to have that protest go peacefully, the counter protests show up with guns, bats, chains, knives, or whatnot, stabbing or threatening violence. And the narrative is always to look at the Black protesters who were originally there and the Hispanic and everybody else who wanted to protest the initial murder of another Black body or the destruction of another Black body. And so the counter protest comes and initiates and instigates or agitates violence from those protesters. And then what does the media report? That this protest has turned violent, without ever having to release the names of the organizations of those counter protesters who showed up, the Manuels. And there is nothing as an organization those social justice warriors will be able to do, because the private information or the personal identifiable information of who are these counter protesters showing up with guns, where do they work, who are their employers, what churches do they go to, how do you effectively fight back against an armed counter protester coming to disrupt and agitate, when essentially, like I showed you, make it big, when essentially the police are protecting the counter protesters, when the arrests made are to the original protesters, when the violence and the actual violence is either inflicted by the police with their riot gear and their pepper spray and their militarized equipment, and this is an unlawful assembly. Bullshit. When the government itself is the protector and the advocate of violence against those protesters. And I just don't know that people would understand this. If it doesn't hit the news and the media with a Black first perspective, people will be touting this as a victory, as something to where they're going after domestic terrorism. Oh, we'll finally get to the numbers. We'll finally be able to lock in on domestic terrorism. Bullshit. If you don't look at the language of it and the conflicting statements made, you won't realize that it's not doing anything at all against bringing out the information for domestic terrorism or white terrorism. But in fact, it's the counter. Black folks ain't doing domestic terrorism. That's just not our lane. But since 1995, those who do have a criminal record, who would be allowed to be attached to any of this database and their information publicly shared, we're not domestic terrorism. But the idea is for them, Congress, to create a case study around Black identity extremists in our social media and our ability to plan and navigate and organize protests through social media. Let them find a felon inside of any of your subscription base. And that then gives them the justification to go and publish and leverage any of the information affiliated with that subscription base. One felon. Your YouTube channel, let them find a felon, somebody that comes on and continues to have conversation or engagement on your YouTube channel, a subscriber. But they have every justification to not go after their white counterparts the same, due to the language of the bill. And I'm going to need somebody to know that, and I'm going to need somebody to actually have a conversation about it. I don't know everything. This was my first review of the actual bill itself. And when you read this language, what does it actually mean? Personally identifiable information. This was the definition. The term personally identifiable information means any information about an individual elicited, collected, stored, or maintained by an agency go forward, cuz. And then the rules of its construction then turn around and say, well, no report or database created may contain the personally identifiable information of any person. Except persons indicted or convicted of a crime. I think this one needs to move forward. The online platform means any public-facing website, web application, or digital application, including a mobile application, and includes a social network, an ad network, a search engine, or an email service. Discourse. No report or database created pursuant to this act may contain the name or other identifiable information of any organization engaged in lawful political or public discourse in the United States protected under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Let me know if I'm missing something. Put your opinions in the chat. For those who have just joined, or for those who joined in at this late mark, Candace Owens goes to the Congressional Senate hearing on confronting violence. She comes, she says, well, I'll give you a black woman's perspective or a black perspective. White supremacy or the threat of white nationalism is small and insignificant. And there's no one in this room who does that. Check out the video. It's there and available. Look it up. It's right there on YouTube. A quick video, about 6 minutes. Link is in the description of the previous video that I published. But she goes in and says, prove the numbers. Prove it. Prove that white nationalism is a problem.
For classics.
The benefits of which would be, you know, public safety. We spent about $2 million on doing it. We wanted to go through 2026, but we want information in this first such report, data and incidents or attempted incidents of domestic terrorism and international terrorism that have occurred in the United States since April 19th, 1995. Disaggregated by fiscal year, so every year since April 19th, 1995, including with respect to each such incident, the number of incidents, where they happened, who was there, what it was, all of that information. That's what is being requested. But they're cutting themselves short because the personally identifiable information is an area that they already have the information collected, stored. If you go to public records right now, you can see everybody that has been arrested in your community or state of a crime. But as they're doing these investigations on domestic terrorism or intended domestic terrorism, they're not sending out the automatic notification through Google that says heightened domestic terrorist activity in your area, that they're meeting and discussing and strategizing ways that they can agitate the black community or threaten harm. Texas, Ohio, all of the information that the Federal Department Bureau of Investigation had gathered from those websites and such. That, what did they call it? Go ahead, niece. Chatter is what they call it. All of the chatter that they were hearing from their sources that indicated there was a potential attack pending, they aren't able to share it with Conscious Moon, even though they work with Google and they demand from Google access to the websites, the subscriptions and the emails and Facebook and YouTube. They demand from them the sharing of the information. And they're able to have personally identifiable information. But HR 3106, personally identifiable information, is any information that's collected or stored on an individual or maintained by the agency. So Google, you can have it. And when it comes to collecting and storing it, we know Google has it. But then Section 302, rules of construction of this database on domestic terrorism, states no report or database created pursuant to this act may contain the personally identifiable information of the person. Do you see the conflicting statement there? Do you see where we're driving with this? So Conscious Moon, Manuel, a Hispanic who identifies as white in your community, is planning an event, an attack with armed men. They're planning a multiple active shooting scenario in your neighborhood, Brother George, where they are going to come and clean up the community by force with violence. And they are going to be specifically, and you hear them in their chat, they're going to be specifically targeting. We ought to just go and clean it up. We ought to just go and do this. Let's meet and go down there. Let's unite and let's go shoot them down like dogs in the street. And they can know exactly who it is, Brother George, and not tell you. They could know exactly who it is and what they're planning to do, where they're going, the types of guns they'll be bringing and everything. And not only will they not tell you, Brother George, they will side with them. The police will side with them. The state and local police will side with them. Not only will they not tell you that these armed men are coming to your neighborhood to do these dangerous acts or commit these acts of violence against you or to agitate you, it's chess. So they move their militarized people into your spaces, hoping to evoke a response from you and the members of your community, Brother George. So when you and the members of your community say, look, these Arabs or these Indians, they just attacked another sister at a barbershop, we're going to go down there and protest the barbershop, or a beauty salon rather. The neo-Nazis then say, oh shit, well, Brother George and the black folks are going to be protesting. Let us go down there with our MAGA hats on, our Confederate flags flying, our shotguns, and let's see if these Negroes are really about it. And the police can know that they're going to come do this, and all of this information is out there. And guess what they'll do? The police will side with the neo-Nazis against you and yours. So you can get mad at white supremacy or white nationalists for showing up, and you can get mad to the point of violence. But them and the police are the enemy that you would be fighting against in those events. Which is why it's essential for you to understand when President Trump assigns executive order making the police a protective class, you cannot fight back. When they have their riot shields out and they have the big tanks and they got pepper spray and the water hoses and fire hoses and they have the rubber bullets and they start shooting at those protesters when violence happens. I'll give you the scenario again, Brother George. Sacramento. Black folks said they killed Stephon Clark. Let's protest. Black folks get the lawful permits and everything to protest for the most part. Some take the protest to the next level and shut down the freeway and all the other shit. But the protest to the city hall and the governance and city government buildings and through downtown, all of that was organized by decree. So I mean, you got to get like a permit to protest like that. Churches and everybody said, okay, let's get our members together. And we'll let you know. We're not taking the political side, but we'll let you know that there is a planned protest happening just in case you're in the area. And you know how the pastor is. The pastor may be a little bit of a coon. He'll say, just in case you got to go to work, I want you to avoid these streets because there will be a protest for the murder of our good brother Stephon Clark. And then he'll tell you where the streets are, where the protest will be. If you're going to be in this area around 9 o'clock a.m. at the Mount Ebenezer Baptist Church, that's where this protest will start, and they'll be moving all the way to the city capitol. Here are the maps of or the route that they'll be taking, just in case you got to get to work, wink, wink, because they got to protect themselves or they got to protect their 501c3. And so they'll tell the members that, and sometimes the members join, sometimes it's community members, sometimes it's happening at the schools or on the street corners. And they're like, damn, this is fucked up. They killed Stephon Clark. What are we going to do? And the leadership comes in and say, well, we need to get organized and we'll have a march. And they plan it and we got to get our permits together. And who can we call? And so the black folks would protest, or they'll have a civil protest and demonstrate their civil rights to protest the police killing a black man. Stay with me. The neo-Nazis and the Klan getting news that there is a protest happening will show up. Well, they'll get organized as well. What will we wear? What will we bring? Will we wear the all black again, brothers at arms? You bring in the shotgun and the pistols and the pepper spray, ready for war. And they are coming to antagonize the protesters because they know that if they provoke you, now it is a violent protest. Bucks for Moses says, so let me get this right. They'll make us a social, I don't know what that word is, pari. You may have to come on. Let me put the link in there. Invite for some little weed, but they'll hide information on domestic terrorists. Bro, that's crazy. Not only do they hide it, they're saying inside of this $2 million data repository that can actively report. And we know we have the Amber Alerts. We know we have what President Trump did something where he sent a text message to every cell phone in America. But because of the way, and this is how I'm interpreting, maybe I could be wrong, but how I'm reading this bill, they won't be able to actionize domestic terrorist threats down to your level, Books for Moses. They won't be able to send you that invite. They won't be able to, that notification. But we know that it's already weaponized. So back to the story. So in Sacramento, Black folks came together. They used their networks, their churches, and everybody that they had at their disposal to get the message out. Protest happening, marketing. We're marching on City Hall. We're marching. We're going to come together, and we're going to continue to march until we create enough awareness to actually, generate some GoFundMe dollars. Get the NAACP involved. And if you're not protesting for yourself, the NAACP and the Urban League and all of those folks, they are not going to get involved. They just don't do it. But at the same time, the counter protesters then come and they got organized. And when they got organized, they said, we're come to agitate. And they were lined up on the streets. And now you got Black men who are now looking at these armed white men who are saying, go home, monkeys, coons, and this is our land and our country. And if you don't like the laws and the police were right, and if you're not going to do any, you're not going to do shit. And so man to man, mano a mano, even though he has on all black and he has on his Batman belt with his bullets and his extra pepper spray and all of that shit, mano a mano, a Black man sees this and a Black man is like, get your ass out of here. This is our protest. And they say, no, we also have the right to protest. And all right, got a couple of folks to add some additional context to the stream. Get some feedback. Can you hear me now?
Well, yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, we're gonna have to work on your system. I don't know why you keep cutting off, man.
Man, they keep kicking me out like it was Yard Stream. All of a sudden, it just says your stream has been disrupted. Then I have to reload it and then go back into the broadcast. Man, I don't know what it is.
You got to get an Ethernet cord.
I'm plugged into an Ethernet cord, brother Jordan. Hold on, let me turn my camera on so you can see this shit. Oh wait, no, I ain't gonna be able to show you all the way down there. I would have to show you from a phone. But yeah, I got my whole box right here plugged into the Ether cord, and the Ethernet cord is right here in the wall.
Okay.
Like 2 feet, a short cord. I am on a short leash. But yeah, they be cutting me off, bro.
So Brother Moses, let me ask you a question real quick.
Shoot.
And I'm trying to pick up what you're trying to put down. So I can get a alert on my phone and say, maybe it's a storm or somebody went missing, but when they have information on a guy that's possibly finna go and act like a large shooting or something, I won't get that alert on my phone.
You will not get it.
Bro, that's crazy. Okay, I think
Personally
that's what I was trying to
identifiable
figure out.
information on that person would not be what was released because he technically hasn't been convicted of a crime yet. And even though he could be on the terrorist watch list and they're sharing information, they know everything about his social media. They know his subscribers. Let's say, have you seen the latest on RBR's channel?
No, I have. Oh, with the JB Gunner guy.
Yeah. So, for example, JB Gunner has a platform that caters to white supremacists. They know it. Stormtroopers or whatever it is, all of those same demographics and all of the people that follow. Time to time, whenever something happens where a police officer kills a black person, on those channels is where you'll see the most information about we should kill them. They should shut the fuck up, hit them with the car if they're in the streets. All of the, the real threats to society or what makes the public less safe. And they know those individuals are out there. They know exactly where those individuals are. And when those individuals get mad and do some Texas shit, rather than them sending the notification to the people inside that Walmart or where that person is, this bill is saying, well, we can't share that personal identifiable information until after they've been convicted or committed said crime.
Excuse my French, but that sounds like some of the most ass backwards shit I ever heard, bro. That just sounds ridiculous.
Well, I blame. See, the problem is you gotta. I blame the black church. This is why I blame the black church for this, right? As black people, we should never be allowing Candace Owens to openly speak for us. Meaning, she is America. She can say what she wants, but she should be getting so much backlash and trashed to the point where they wouldn't even want to promote her. And I'm gonna tell you why. When Donald Trump pushes a bill to make the police a protected class, and she gets up there and says that white supremacy exists, but not in this room. And the left and the people on the left, but her name is Candace Owens. She's speaking English. The very aspect of who she is and the education she got is white supremacy. And see, the thing is it's a psychological thing. We as black people have never had our image protected at all, and we've never been a protected class like the homosexuals are today, like the all the other groups. So for her to say that, and black people just allow her to say these things in 2019, it ain't nobody's fault but ours. We should be aggressively at this point saying who should speak and who shouldn't speak for us. Like it's 2019. How do we still allow that? Right now, the white man ain't even the problem because the white man has been who he always been. The problem is these Negroes that's out there being a buffer class for white supremacy. And we're not attacking them. We're not going after them. They should be attacked to the point where they feel threatened. But that's the problem. That's what the problem. The white man is going to always be who he always been. He ain't doing nothing no different than what he been doing. It's the Candace Owens in him. It's the problem. And we ain't doing nothing about it.
Well, I appreciate y'all for clearing that up. I just wanted to get up here and get hip to the dip real quick. I'm finna drop off, but I appreciate you, Brother Moses, and I appreciate y'all, brothers. Y'all keep on doing y'all things, man.
All right. Yes, sir.
Hey, Brother Moses.
Yes, sir.
We gotta get a bill. We gotta get a bill where the federal government is forced to protect us as a class of people. If the federal government is not protecting us as a class of people, anything that we trying to do is not going to mean anything, because our image is so ruined and so destroyed as a people. It's hard for us to get public sympathy from other people in order to get allies. Everybody look at us as a group. Look at those people. Even at Black Africans, when they come here, look at those people, because the federal government portrayed us a certain way where it's hard for us to be allied. So everybody else come and they just take advantage of us as a people within our communities. This is the fucking problem. You get dumbass Candace Owens, white supremacy don't exist in this room. And the bitch calling herself African American or American and her name Candace Owens. Like, it's just, that's the dumb shit. That's the dumb shit. But at some point, like, we gotta wake up, man. We gotta wake up as a people, man. That's where it's at, and that's what I'm pushing.
So I feel you there. I don't have the same intimate connection with the church being responsible for it, but I do think that they have a duty. And if their duty is to continue to compromise their what is it, the 501c3 status,
Yeah.
by taking a more active role in properly vetting who are these leaders that are going to Congress, that are having these opinions, that are given this platform, then they can at least apply pressure on the black end on who we're sending to Congress to testify. We can't prevent Candace Owens from being invited, and there's not much that we could do to prevent her shy of violence or the threat of violence to say, Candace Owens, stop speaking. We can't mute her. And so she's going to continue to be the puppet that she's always been, or that she wants to be. And I think she gets some benefit out of that. She actually enjoys being that type of person.
Yep. But see, I'm gonna tell you why I mentioned the church and why and what we have to do like they did in the 60s. The reason why I mentioned the church, because we got to understand something. The black church is the heartbeat of the black community. The majority of us, almost 50 million black people, is in the black church. Whenever the pastors and the bishops say go, if the black people vote for this, the problem that we having is these sellout ass ministers. There's listen. Speak black.
Damn, you're in a low signal area. You're borging.
Just go ahead. You finish talking about.
All right, I'll let you get to a quick spot. My position is such that there are, what is it? The black, what is it? The Baptist convention. And at that Baptist convention, there are presidents appointed and other, there's an organized structure, to say less. And in that organized structure of the Baptist convention, there is also agendas. Some are on the spiritual, some are just on policy, like who is an ordained minister versus someone who is an educated minister. Who is just preaching versus who is actually qualified to preach that Bible. And they have different processes that they examine. The other one would be their position on politics and the role that they can play politically. You'll see at some of the churches, they will invite a candidate to come, or a candidate will show up. They may not say, here's an agenda that I want you to push specifically, but it's inferred. And then after events like this, they have different positions on social interaction, where do we protest? Do we rally? Do we take a part? Do we play a role in the rebuttal or in the backlash when a police officer or when anyone is committing crimes against members of the black community? My position is they do have a role, they do have an organization, and they do have a structure. How are they actually leveraging it? I couldn't tell you, because I'm not a part of those meetings or those circles. And in fact, I'm not sure that I know too many people who are inside the decision makers of the Baptist convention. And therefore, my scope would be limited, but it's probably something that we could research. Find out who are the leading figures of the Baptist convention. Find out how is it that they best like to be communicated to. And then reach out to them to see what their actual agenda really is in the areas of social activism or society in general, the communities they serve, and politics. And see if it aligns. See where do they stand on their representatives. What is the process of finding somebody who can be a more in line or to align on the black agenda, on selecting people who can actually go and represent and testify on behalf of the black community when it comes to violence or domestic terrorism in America? Who is going to speak out against black identity extremists? Who is going to be crafting those bills that protect black people? Who is charged with that duty?
I'll say this: what I was trying to say. When you look at our communities, and the reason why I said I blame the church, Brother Moses,
Yeah.
because the ministers have more power in the black community than we can believe.
Oh, I know that's right.
Even back when Elijah Muhammad in the 60s and the 50s told black people to move, in the 40s, Elijah Muhammad tried to mobilize black people, but he didn't have the power that the black minister had in the South. He didn't have the power that Reverend Abernathy and them had. And they began to mobilize the people. So when you look at black people today, the reason why they gave them 501(c)(3)s and stopped black ministers from moving politically, because we control a large portion of the voting ballots. And if the black pastors mobilized black people under a black agenda and told them to move this way, we'd have been out of this situation last night. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, the reason why I blame the black church, because we can't physically harm Candace Owens, but we got the ability to cause so much ruckus to the point where white folks wouldn't even want to be associated with her, but we won't do it. See, they're comfortable in going out and doing it. But if with our dollars and those so-called sellout ass ministers of the day being on board, a lot of stuff that you see, a lot of fuckery that you see going on today won't happen. The problem is we just go to church to shuck and jive every Sunday, and we don't put no pressures on these pastors as a people. We just go along with whatever they say. But I guarantee on Sunday, it's millions of black people inside that church worshiping Jesus. Bishop George will tell you the truth. So the heartbeat of our community is that church. And when you look at the church and look at the history of the church for the Negro people, everything that we ever got or rights came from out of that church. So we got to understand. So when I say I blame the church today, because we have never exited the church. We may have left the Republican Party, but we've never left the church. And that's where our power still lies, because that's where we come for corporate gatherings. We're separated and everything else, but when it comes to church, we worship together. But we won't politic together, because we don't put pressure on the pastor to say, put that 501(c) down and begin to mobilize the fucking people. And you won't have those Candace Owenses the way you do. They only take advantages. They take advantage because of our weaknesses, man. Because we failed to come together, man. We still stay divided. So she can come up there with her black ass and her white husband and say white supremacy still exists, but it doesn't exist in this room. You know, you can have an Amber Geiger still standing trial saying I shot a black man, and but it was a mistake because I thought I was in my apartment. And this is what I'm talking about. So that's where I blame the church, because that's where we give everything to. That's where matter of fact, I'll say this and I shut up, Brother Moses. That's where we submit to. The black woman say she don't submit to no man. Guess who the black woman submit to? The black fucking church. She's submitting a heartbeat to that black church. So we got to stop playing these games, man. I really step back and I observe stuff, man, before I speak. And I see what moves our people in this country, man. It's the church. But we not putting no demands on them. We just, you know, he come in, say the devil been kicking your butt all day. You're going to get a breakthrough. Come up here and give a seed offering. Man, your mom go up there and give away all the fucking rent money. That's the power they got over us, man. So I rest on that.
Yeah, man, that accountability element is what I pull out from there. And when I'm like one of those minds that it's always working. And so I start to try to break down, what does the Black Leadership Organization look like? How is their influence so great? And you're absolutely right. That Black church does still have the accountability element, even though they're not exercising it, or it doesn't feel like they're exercising. When you see bills like this, it's like, well, what is the immediate response from the Black church? What are they actually doing? And not just the Black church as an individual, you know, corner black church, but the organization of Black church. And that's why I bring out, like, you know, not just the NAACP, but and the Congressional Black Caucus, but also that Black convention, or the Baptist Convention. If those three are the pillars of accountability, see what I'm saying? If they are the pillars of accountability, and those who have been charged with the leadership duties to be the protection or to add protection into the law or the civilizing of America from a black perspective. If it is the NAACP and the Congressional Black Caucus on a political wing, and then also with the influence or the everyday social wing or spiritual wing, but social wing from the Black Convention, then who are their leaders? Who are the ones making these critical decisions to say nothing and to do less? Right. Where are their bills? Where are, when they have when the other side pushes a Candace Owens, where is their person? Who is their person that they push?
That's the point.
What up, Jeremy? And how do we can't even scrutinize or criticize what they're saying or what they're not doing because we don't even know who they are if they exist right now. The right. Invisible black leadership and that's right there hiding in plain sight.
Right. Moses, let me ask you a question, Moses.
Yes,
outside of the black church, what other organization or entity has we seen since the black church that moved black people?
The Nation of Islam.
To really,
but that's still a black church though, so damn.
Yeah, you're right. What I'm saying, to the magnitude of the things that we got done in this country, show me one organization that can rival the black church.
Rival, there are none. The only rival is on the other side, which is Congress.
Right. Nothing can come up against the black church for black people where we can say, well, we don't have to use the black church, we can use this. No, it's the black church. That's why I put the blame on the black church. Because I'm gonna get with you today after the live stream, because I know you weren't able to see the stream I did yesterday, and I want to do a part 2 to really go in depth to show what the pastors did in the early 1900s and what they was responsible for and what the black church is not carrying on today.
That legacy.
Yes, it's what they're not carrying on, and we've as the grandchildren, we've become victims of what the people before us was supposed to do, and they didn't carry on. They sold out.
That was before the whole 501c3 thing, though, right? That gave them the tax exemption for their land, so they can build a mega church or they can build a corner church and have a tax write-off on the property value and all of that, though, right? And off the income generated.
And it was a couple things that we'll uncover. I'm gonna send you, a couple of things we can look at, and we'll make a whole presentation off of it. But your Candace Owens and them is birthed out of this kind of stuff. We've come a long way from the Stokely Carmichaels and the Dr. Kings and the Mega Evers and them. You don't see them no more. You don't show me the Mega Evers in the black church of 2019 that's willing to take a stand. Where you at? In the name of God, so he's saying in the name of God, this is wrong, and I stand before the enemy with God backing me. Where? Show me. I'd like to see one.
See, because they knew that God was bigger than country.
There you go.
And so if you're backed by God and you know that inside your own country, we are going up against people who are actually pushing these bills. You see the language inside the bills is protecting the least of theirs. Let me share the screen one more again real quick so they can see the images to which we are referring to. Again, if you just joined the chat, we're having a discussion about HR 3106. It is about domestic terrorism and the data gathering and data sharing on domestic terrorism here in America. Inside that bill, I pointed out a couple of areas that I found concerned with. Number one, in the rules of construction, so it's a database, and they want information shared between the different departments and agencies from a federal all the way down to the state and local levels. Ologies that exist that allow alerts to come out on certain events or activities that they find. And right now, this new bill that they're proposing in the language, Section 302 Rules of Construction, even though they're creating this database and this data share, it says no report or database created pursuant to this act may contain the personally identifiable information of any person except persons indicted or convicted of a crime. So why does that matter to us? As we continue to move towards, look, we got to stand up. We got to use our church and leverage our church to be our medium and as our platform to get this information out there that we need. We got to stand up as men, as the deacons or as the stewards of the black community and start to defend ourselves against you know, police brutality, criminal injustice, or the criminal justice system or criminal injustice, right? As they start to move towards these things and black folks become to get more and more organized, what are the weapons or the tools used against black organization?
Hey,
The
brother Moses,
weapons
I'm
and
gonna
tools
jump
that
off
are
real
used
quick.
are these
Hey,
types of bills. Go ahead.
yeah,
You said something?
yeah, brother Moses, I'm gonna jump off. I gotta train this Muay Thai class.
Okay.
I'm gonna call your phone after you come off after I finish this class, so I can
All
send
right.
you some of the information. All right.
I
Peace to the
might be
chat.
at the barber shop and my barber is actually a part of the NOI, so I'm gonna get his perspective, and we might have to have a little quick barbershop talk right there on the spot, man.
All right,
It's too
brother.
big to just allow to go nowhere. All right, thanks for joining. Super Triz, man, take the link, man, and go and come up here and have a build with your bro one time, man. Respect. And so written inside of HR 3106 is certain language that I found to be problematic. If you're looking at addressing, white nationalists or domestic terrorism, that's not these black people who were arrested for weed charges back in 1995, 96, 97. That's not us. So if you're going to say we can only publish the information or the personally identifiable information of people who have not been convicted of a crime, then you're really saying we are publishing the information of those folks who have been convicted of a crime. Now, why is that relevant to the black community? Because they're going back to incidents or attempted incidents or anything, information that they've gathered on crimes committed since April 19th, 1995. You got to look at the language that's actually written in. Damn, I be going high pitched, man. I'm emotionalist. I'm a sentimentalist presenter. I don't, all the data and facts and the numbers, and I could show you how many people have been arrested and things. The ask was how many domestic terrorist incidents have happened since 1995. And unfortunately, as you build through what they actually wrote inside the bill, they put in they had the term, they defined the term. Personally identifying information means anything that was collected, stored, and maintained by the agency on those people. And then what they did that I find the most problematic is that then they turned around and protected that personal identifiable information. For us, that means whether or not you get the alert when a white nationalist or a white nationalist group, somebody who had been driving them, I forget what his name is, but he was on RBR's channel, and RBR for the last week and a half has been going back and forth with this white supremacist dude. But when that guy actually has his meetings and his conventions and his organizations and they plan an attack. What is that? If they actually were to plan an attack and orchestrate an attack until they carried it out and attempted it, they would not release the personal identifier information. So you can get an alert. You can be driving up the freeway in some places and look at the Amber Alert and it'll tell you, a 1997 Bronco. But they have the technology already enabled to send you the photos of individuals who are perpetuating or planning to carry out an assault. For example, this is from Charlottesville, Virginia. But there was an incident that happened in Texas, and then the very next day, something in Ohio. How much more impactful would it have been if they shared the damn face of the person who was in those areas looking to carry out this heinous attack? Unfortunately, because of the language, or what I'm interpreting from the language of this bill, they won't be able to share with you a real-time alert that this guy who I've named Manuel, a Hispanic who identifies as white, is in your area, armed and dangerous, and ready to carry out a terrorist attack against your people. And so you don't have the means to protect yourself. While at the same time, what the bill does do is allow for any connections in the social media space. Oh, sorry. The second part that I was bringing out, that the police would tend to side based on all evidence since the 1995 or probably before then, police tend to side with those same white nationalist groups. Right, wrong, or indifferent. For us, we know it was about black identity extremists. All right, Super Triz, thanks. Online platforms. The term online platform, as they defined it, was the public-facing websites, web applications, digital applications, including mobile applications, and includes a social network, an ad network, a search engine, or an email service. Which is why I tell you that this is the fully integrated system from Facebook to Google and YouTube and all of those different, the ABCs. So the alphabet boys want the ABC level data sharing in real time. But what would they share? If you don't tell me that there is a threat out there for me and he looks like Manuel and he's coming to do a violent crime in my neighborhood, I am ill prepared to defend myself against the Manuels. Let me see if I close this down, what would happen on my end. Let me press escape and see if that breaks it down. And again, for those folks, I know people like it in small sound bites. I will work towards creating a shorter snippet of just this information that's available, where it can be located. That way it's easier to share for those folks who only need about 5 minutes, and that's all that they can really tolerate when it comes to the information that they can consume at a given time. I know many folks, they consume this information on their lunch breaks and things like that, or when they're in passing. And so because of those reasons, I want to make it like a 5-minute video just with the information where it's available, make it easier to share so that people can see that this is actually happening. This is an actual bill that is protecting, in my interpretation. I may not be the smartest man, but in my interpretation, even though it says the Domestic and International Terrorism Act, or Data Act, it is about data. It is a fully integrated system of data that has real-time capabilities, but it protects the white nationalists and the domestic white groups, hate groups that they are a part of or that they affiliated with, while at the same time making it easier to act against what they would determine Black identity extremists and foreign groups. That would be the major takeaway that I would want you to have. The funding mechanism, the appropriations, $1 to $2 million, okay, that's something. But the major takeaway is that it makes it easier to protect the white nationalist groups and the personal identifiable information. It makes it harder for those people who live inside of American cities where these hate groups would want to target. It makes it harder for those individuals inside of those communities to protect themselves, those protesters and such. It's harder for them to protect themselves in their spaces when they are doing lawful assembly and protesting things like police just killed another Black man. It makes it harder for those groups to protect themselves, makes it easier for the white nationalist groups to protect themselves. And it's codified. It is a bill that it is passed. And so there's not much that we can do. Where are our Black leaders on these type of bills? Where's the pushback? Where is the bill of protection for the Black folks who they would identify as identity extremists? So you have the people in the middle who aren't doing much of shit. They're talking about economics. They just want society and capitalism to flow well. Then you have people who are talking about immigration, and people who are talking about women's rights and abortion, and talking about all of these other issues. But on the issue of race and on the issue of how we address our personal safety and those rights, criminal justice and such, this bill, there are people on one side that says protect white nationalism, it's free speech, let's keep going forward with it, and who are using all the political tools at their disposal and economic tools at their disposal to make it easier for white hate to proliferate white hate in America. They're making it easier to proliferate white hate in America. And they are also at the same time using that same platform to target Black folks who are now trying to move Black folks into a space of saying we have to be in control of our destiny. The government will not do it for us. When somebody takes one of ours, we are responsible. And before they can take one of ours, we need to be responsible for the measures in place. Brother George comes on and makes a great point when he says the Black Panther Party, when they get out there, and the Deacons for Defense, when they got out there, and the Black Church, when they got out there to be the protection that the Black community needed. Because the police, the government, state and local, and they were the ones in many cases who were imposing this threat against the Black community. And their constituents and their families and their communities were the ones who were passing the bills that made the targeting of the Black community an everyday and common thing. And the media is one that also proliferates the message that denigrates the black man and makes him a target, makes him a thing. Brother Taz brought out that Martin Luther King, when he had to have that same conversation. He said, look, you've already made him a thing. And there is nothing that we can really do to help you stop identifying black men as a thing. So if we know that we can't go to you to stop making us a thing, a target and such, then all we can do is go to us internally and say, well, how do we make ourselves a better thing, a better defense mechanism, a better protection, and a better economic driver for the change we need to see in the 22nd century? What does our 50-year plan look like in the future? What does our leadership look like today? What are they doing, and how are they still using all the political leverage that they have in order to be an effective combat force to combat what's happening on the other end, which is the proliferation of white hate groups? At the same time, the targeting of the Black unification movement. All right, man. So I've been on for about an hour and a half. Hopefully this information was relevant to some of the folks who came into the chat. You got a great information set here. I'll continue. If you like it, hit the thumbs up. If I see some thumbs up there, I know that means, Moses, keep doing what you're doing. Even if it's only 20 of us, that 20, 5 out of that 20 may be able to share this context or share the information, share the data, and say, look, they may not remember the name of the bill, but they do know what's going on, and they're able to add that perspective inside of the conversations that they're having. They see that the proliferation of white hate is being exacerbated and protected and codified by law and by these bills. It originated from Mississippi. What more do you expect? It originated in Mississippi. What more do you expect? But these bills that proliferate white hate and add additional protections to white hate groups and the individuals who would be willing to carry out those hate crimes here in America gives them the protection that says, well, until they're actually convicted of a crime, even our Federal Bureau of Investigation and all the data, all the websites, all the Google and YouTube videos and all the indicators that we can find about these people, we cannot make actionable. And they will not move into a position of being able to give us that heads up. They won't even give us an alert. We will not get that text message that says, be on the lookout for the Manuel. Him and his hate group are in your area looking to cause harm. A big storm coming, flood damage in your area, you'll get an alert. Hail size of golf balls, you'll get an alert. Levee getting ready to break, you might get an alert. Tornado coming, might get an alert. Time to evacuate from a natural disaster, you might get an alert. But my nigga, if the white folks are coming with guns like Texas or Ohio, they will not send you an alert. You've been warned. You've been given the information that you need. I think my next conversation, I still want to go into some of the militarization that's happening with the satellites and the drones. We got to continue to pay homage, or I will take the initiative. I say we, but I'll say I am very much interested in holding and preserving and moving forward the legacy of our warrior, Makai Johnson, killed by a drone. So I think my next presentation will be the proliferation of drone strikes and those capabilities. Folks that loved President Obama, they may not understand how deep it was to initiate a drone strike precedent to kill people with drones non-discriminatorily and what that means to a civilized nation. And as we saw, they used a little robot or something like that with AI technology to kill Brother Micah, our warrior. And so I'll continue that legacy by having a video that talks about some of the drones and how smart those drones are coming up soon, probably today. But I do need a haircut. It is 8:30 where I'm at. Everybody, peace, man. Continue to follow the B1 Network. If you go to the incomparable Taz exclusives, I'll tell you this. This is a hint. Watch a few of those videos. See who responds and who chats in a lot of those videos. Follow those people, because that will help drive your Google Analytics for content that's similar. So if you want to know who's driving B1 perspectives, the analytics don't lie. I mean, sometimes they'll throw in some randoms and the popular people, and they don't get it right all the time, but they will help you get to channels like the Nyla Says, and to the information like the brother George Macon, and to hopefully they'll drive you to people like myself, and we can continue to create the content that we need. It's Black First, it's a Black perspective. We are informing the globe on what's really happening and what has happened from history and its ramifications today from a Black lens, and it's much needed. Taz the Teacher, the B1 Classroom, Taz Goat exclusive, the B1 Sports Network. That's the one that I don't agree. I don't even follow the B1 Sports Network because I signed up for the Fantasy Football League. I am 0 for 3. My first pick was Drew Brees when I knew I should have got a wide receiver, but I know where I was aligned. If I would have went to the second round, somebody was going to take my quarterback. I picked Drew Brees first round. Next thing you know, Drew Brees is knocked out for the next 6 weeks. I have not won a single week, always down by like 5 and 10 points. But I'm not the best in sports. I rock with him on the Taz the Teacher channel, the B1 the Classroom, Taz exclusive. I love the Roast Edition. And as you know, the B1 Hip Hop, that is where I live, whether I chat or not. But there are others who are continuing to make comparable and right there information. They're trying to have a B1 or a Black First ideology, or one. When I say Black First, rather, I don't give a fuck that you talk about white people. I don't give a fuck. I don't care really that you talk about white topics. And I don't give you the benefit of being Black having a perspective. I don't make that a Black First perspective. But if you identify that your audience has a value in information that comes from our culture, our soul, our way of viewing information, and you are unapologetic about presenting that character, the cuss words, the slang, the nuances that we use, and presenting the history and things from that, and look how the Black folks were impacted by it. Look how Black women may have been impacted by it. Look, Black male dominance in our spaces, our community, our churches, our politics, where we got it right, where we got it wrong, our inventors, those who have been exploited, those of us in the Black community or Black folks who were exploiters. That passion or that fire, that energy, I would rock with. And I think there are some people who are missing the mark 100% out of 100 videos. And why I do this is because you could turn to a million different YouTube channels, but it is hard as hell finding somebody who's just going to keep it real and have a conversation that you can probably relate to if you're on that line. This quote is not mine, but I'm going to leave it with you, and I think I'm going to leave it with you on the rest of these shows. Great minds discuss history. Average minds discuss events, and simple minds discuss people. Black First.